Julie, welcome to Women Finding Clarity.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm sorry for the listeners, I rescheduled this interview like five times because my calendar kept changing. So I'm so glad we finally made it.
Well, I very much, and I probably said this in an email, I believe in divine timing. I believe that everything works out how and when it's supposed to. So this is just the day it was
Yeah.
supposed to work out. We're good. So the way that I know you is you were the keynote speaker for the first Cape Cod Women's Association conference.
Yes.
And it was so good. Literally one of the best keynotes I've ever seen. I was completely blown away by your energy, by your content, by all of it. And so I was like, okay, she's on my short list of people I will have on the podcast.
That seems so long ago.
It was so
I,
long ago,
I know it
right?
seems like so long ago.
I don't know. Maybe I just got the nerve finally to be like, hey, do you want to be on my podcast?
I so many people, it's funny. I talk about networking and relationship building and not being afraid to reach out to people and connect. And I have had so many people say how afraid they were to reach out to me. I'm like, I'm not doing it right if you're afraid to reach out to me.
No, you know what it is your presence is so powerful and you just have such you just take ownership of your stage. And
Mm.
so it's almost like being starstruck a little bit like, wow, she's amazing. Right? And so I think that's more what it is. You're so likable, you're so I don't know. I feel like this conversation is comfortable and amazing. And still, there's a little bit of that, like, Julie Brown is on my podcast.
You know what's funny is I'm also a sweaty bitch. Like I sweat so much when I am on stage. And I was in Nashville, Tennessee this summer giving a keynote, and it was a million degrees outside. And it was still kind of warm in the conference, in the convention center. And after I gave my speech, which you've seen, which is very high energy, and I'm all over the stage, I was sweating. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she was like, "Can I give you a hug?" And I was like, "It's gonna be gross." I mean, like, go ahead, but it's gonna be gross. And she was like, "I don't care. I just want to hug you." And I was like, I felt so bad for her because I was like, I'm so sweaty.
I love it. I love it. You're like, I'll hug you, but this is how you're going to remember me
Yeah,
forever.
moist.
Yeah. Please. That's awesome. But that's what you do for people, right? You are so authentic
Mm,
and you bring all of it with you onto the
yeah,
stage. And so you are very relatable to people. You allow people to just be themselves.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is the goal, right? Of networking. Just show up
Yeah.
authentically, just be yourself.
Exactly. I mean, I think a lot of people think like, what does a professional look like? What do they sound like? What am I supposed to talk about? I struggled with that. My company is 8 years old. It just turned 8 last month.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And especially when you get the statistics around, most startups fail within the first 5 years. So um I I struggled with it too. Like, what does a solopreneur look like? What does she sound like? What is this company going to be? And when I stopped trying to figure out what it was supposed to look like and realized it already was itself, like it was me, all of my branding became so much easier. All of my connecting became so much easier. Every single piece of branding I do looks like it literally fell out of my mouth without my brain like thinking about it first. But that's the way I like it.
Yeah, that takes a lot of self-confidence.
Or you just don't care. Like I'm at the point where, like I'm almost 50, and it's like there's this beautiful thing that happens to women after they turn 40 where it's like I've lost all my fucks to give. Like I don't like I you either are going to love it or you're going to hate it. And I can only be me, and if you love me, thank you so much for being part of my tribe. And if you don't, there are other people that you will resonate with and go be part of their tribe.
Yeah, yeah. And it's okay. And it's not your
Mhm.
responsibility.
And I don't get upset about it anymore. Like I used to like look at my newsletter. Oh my God, I had 3 unsubscribes this week. And then I was like, I don't care. If you don't want to be a part of my community, then don't. Like I can't take that personally. But that it takes practice to do that, to feel that way, to feel comfortable with not being everybody's favorite, you know? I'd rather have, you know, I'd rather have 1,000 people who are like, "Oh my god, she is the best," than 5,000 are like, "Meh,
Her again.
her again." Yeah.
Yeah. So, what we do here is talk about your life's PhD and how you got from
Mm,
what you went through to where
mhm,
you are now. And so, who were you growing up? Who were you in your younger years? And what brought
yeah.
you to this place of, I'm a networking genius?
So, I I'm in a second career right now. Keynote speaking and professional speaking is a second career for me. And that's I started this company when I was 39 because I knew I needed to do it before I turned 40. Like for me, that was like the line of demarcation. It was like you start it before you're 40 or you're going to get comfortable in the job that you have. So I worked in architecture and construction for 17 years, doing business development, client relationships, lead generation, and I was very, 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 very good at it. And again, a male dominated industry, but I flourished in it. I was really happy in that industry. Um, and I had made some great connections, and I had a lot of people who were invested in my success, who potential clients that wanted to see me succeed, who said, I'll do anything you want. I'll make sure that you get on this list or whatever." When I started my company in 2016, I started it as a fractional business development consultant. So business developers in general get paid a lot of money and we spend a lot of money. So, because we're constantly going to conferences and taking people out and golfing and all the things that you have to do with potential clients. And so that's not available to a lot of companies. So I said, well, if I can be a fractional business developer, then I can bring my network and my expertise to multiple firms. And that's how the company started. And about 6 months after I started the company, I had a woman in my network who I had worked with at an architecture practice. She was putting together a thing in Boston, a 2-day conference in Boston, and she asked if I would give a talk on networking. And I was like, her name was Mary. And so I really should send her something because she launched my speaking career. Her name was Mary Louie, and she's amazing. And I said, Mary, I don't have a networking speech. Like, and she's like, but you're the best networker I've ever met. Like, look what you're doing. Like, your entire company is networking. And I hadn't thought of it that way. Like, I had thought of the strategy behind business development and making a plan and having, your target list and like how you were going to build relationships with those targets and how you were going to share information. And then I was like, oh my God, I am good at networking. Like, that is what I do. And so I wrote that speech. And you had to sign up because there was only so much room in the room that I was gonna be in, and you had to sign it up in advance, and a week before I gave the speech, it sold out. The speech sold out. The seats sold out. They weren't charging. And I was like, "Oh, they don't know me. Nobody knew me from Adam, like, that was going there." And I was like, "This is a topic that people are hungry to learn about."
Yep.
And so I gave that speech, which was not great. It's like your first speech, you're nervous, I'm sweating. Like, I have to be very careful about what clothes I wear when I'm on stage because I sweat from head to toe. I'm like, if you've ever seen a video of Whitney Houston on stage where she always has like a towel, like that is me. Like I am the
No
equivalent.
polyester on your stage.
No. And so there were people in that audience who it they said, "Would you come and do this for this, my organization, for this organization that I'm a part of?" And it just snowballed from there. And I started saying about a year into giving this speech, I started saying that I was writing a book because I thought that that's what I should be saying. Like it gave me more cachet. And I was like, oh, and I'm writing this book. Never thought I was actually going to get that book written. But then, like everything you need to do in life, if it's a big, hairy, audacious goal and you don't have that skill set, you hire a coach. So then when I invested in a coach, I was like, oh, now I really gotta write this book. So between speaking and writing the book, that is how I became the expert. And I am still a scholar of networking. I still read studies on human connection. I read studies every week. Or, I read Harvard Business Review every other month. And like, there's a lot of, company connection information in there. And so I'm still learning. I'm still learning. And I think that's what's great. I there's the world is evolving all of the time. Like when I think about how we networked pre-pandemic and how the pandemic changed the way we network and how comfortable we are doing things online and building, online relationships. It's I'm never going to tire of it. There's always going to be something to learn.
That's amazing. And, what I heard really is that you started out with this idea and then you were willing to put forth iteration after iteration. And the more you got vested in your own business, the
Mhm.
more you learned. And so you went from this broader idea and then you niche down and niche down and
Yep.
niche down until you got to where you are now. And your book is amazing. And like, as I said, your book, I just got covered in chills, right? Because this shit works.
Yeah, I always joke I didn't write a book called This Shit Doesn't Work. So, um I as I tell that story about Mary, I think there's a lesson in there too that, there's a saying a butterfly can't see its own wings. And I think when other people see things in you, believe them. Like if I had said no to her, I wouldn't be a speaker today, 8 years later. And I love what I do. I absolutely love every minute of every stage I'm on, every single one.
I
And it's
love to
because
hear
of
that.
her.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And as women, I think I don't know if it's programming. I don't know if it's nature nurture. I don't know. But we receive a compliment from someone and we're
Mm,
like, no, I'm not a speaker. No, I could never get up on stage in front of people.
right.
Right. And just like you said, had you said that to her, you would be someplace completely different right
Yeah.
now and maybe not feeling successful.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. It makes me sort of emotional, that story, because like she totally changed my life. Just
Yeah.
she saw something in me and I didn't say no. Well, first I was like, Mary, really? Me? And she was like, yeah, you. And and because of that, my entire trajectory changed. I became an author. Started my podcast. I get to travel the world and change people's lives, especially women, because I don't speak mostly to women's audiences, but I get hired by a lot of women's conferences. And for the listeners who, we haven't talked a lot about sort of like the technical part of networking, but there is a statistics that says that one of the single biggest limiting factors for women in business is lack of a network. And so when I get to change people's careers because now they're not afraid of networking and they see the value in it and they see that it can be fun and they see that it is a way to greater influence and success, like the more women I can help change their lives, be more successful, like that's amazing that I get to do that.
Yeah. And that is why I reached out. And I'm like, you need to be on this podcast. We're women finding clarity, right?
Mhm.
And so the more clarity we can find in
Yeah.
life and in business, the more successful we're going to be. And when you're up on that stage and other women are watching you, you're an example of,
Yeah.
look, you can do whatever you want to do too. It's not just me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
And
beautiful.
people say to me, like, well, I'm not like, because I'm very gregarious and extroverted. And when people say I'm not like you, I said, well, good, because there's plenty of me right here. Like, we don't need more me. We
Yeah.
need more of you. So attack networking in your career the way that is comfortable for you.
Yeah.
There's never one way to do something.
That's right. That's right. And what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another.
Right.
So let's dig into it a little bit. When it
Mhm.
comes to networking, what do you say to the person who is an introvert but knows they need to get out and meet new people? What's the best way for them to handle that?
Well, the first thing I would say is embrace being introverted because, societally, we like to tell introverts that they should change, that they should try to be less introverted. It, I mean, I don't understand why we aren't telling introverts to lean into their strength, which is introverts inevitably are far more prepared for networking events, for meetings, for one on ones. They've done their research. And then one of the critical tools of networking is listening and listening in order to actually understand and not listening for your time to talk. Um, and introverts are so good at listening. And so I always say to introverts, like, those are two, when it comes to networking, nobody realizes how much research and strategy should go behind networking, where there's nothing in our careers in what we do for a living that we wouldn't strategize. We wouldn't have a plan. And yet we walk into networking events without plans, without who do I want to meet in this room? What is my goal of being here? Like, and so introverts are so much better at making a plan and executing the plan versus someone like me who it's like, oh, I don't have to worry. I can talk to a fire hydrant for 10 minutes. Like, I'll just walk into that room. I think people have to understand, like, there's a lot of strategy behind it. And you have to know what rooms to be in. You have to know where to spend your energy and in a lot of times your money, because costs money to go to events and stuff like that. And introverts are so good at it. And also, when it comes to networking can happen one-on-one. One of the best ways to grow your network is through strategic introductions. So look at the people you already know and say, "Hey, I'm trying to grow my network. I am on the introverted side of the ambivert spectrum, so I'm not really big into going to big events. I want to grow it one person at a time. Who do you think I should connect with? Is there somebody in your network that you could make an introduction for me?" That again, networking, do it the way that's comfortable for you. And strategic introductions are the best way to grow your network, hands down.
Hands down. It's like getting a referral from someone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's this person I think you should know.
Yep.
Who doesn't
Exactly.
want to meet that person?
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the tips I took away from your talk a couple of years ago was when you're reaching out to someone, say on LinkedIn, say how you knew them. Don't just
Exactly.
hit the connect button,
Yep.
right? And for
Yep.
me, I feel like that's made all the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like reaching out on LinkedIn and saying and just connecting without a note is akin to like calling somebody you don't know and just trying to have a conversation. And when they're like, "Why are you calling me?"
Yeah.
We wouldn't do that. But like because we're online, we feel like we're allowed to do that and just connect. Where I mean, I get hundreds of LinkedIn requests every week and I ignore most of them because I don't know why they're reaching out to me. I don't know who we have in common, what you know about me, why we would should be connected. I'm very I'm very into yes, first before I say this statement, a big broad network is very important. Having a network that you can tap into, a deep bench of people who are invested in your success is very important. However, quality over quantity. And so when I'm connecting with somebody, I really want to know why we should be connected. Where did you hear me speak? Did you read my book? Do we have mutual connections? Otherwise, like, I feel it's very disingenuous to just connect for no reason. So
Yeah.
that's why you
I
can
think that
follow somebody. You can follow somebody on LinkedIn if you don't know them. Do that first. Interact with their page a little bit. So, like, people have followed me and then interacted with me on my posts, and then I get to know them, and then we connect. It's That's a better way to do it if you have never met that person. So,
and what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that treat it all like you would treat real life relationships,
because
real
they
life
are, because
interactions,
they are real life. It
because
is
they
real
are.
life. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you're right. I think when we get online and, you always hear about keyboard cowboys who will say
Yeah.
anything and whatever. And that is a very negative connotation of it. But part of it, I think we do have more confidence when we're online because we
Yeah.
don't have to be verbal. We don't necessarily have to be eye to eye or heart to
Yeah.
heart. But I love this idea of flipping the feeling of it and saying, let's make it an authentic connection versus
Hmm.
just how many likes do I get on a post or
Yeah.
how many, friends do I have on social media?
Yeah. I mean, I got off of Facebook completely because I don't think it's good for my mental health. um, and so I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, and those are my real friends. Like, I care about all of my connections on LinkedIn. Um, and I think, and I mentioned it, like the pandemic has changed the way we build relationships. And so some of these relationships are ones that we are pretty much only maintaining and nurturing online. So
Yeah.
I want to know who these people are and care about them.
Yeah. I love that because it's nice to hear your heart, because you're such a big energy and a big presence. And
Mm,
for you to kind of tap in and be like, I'm also heart and I care about these people. And, you
right.
know, it just feels good. It feels like it's a whole complete.
Yeah, let me tell you, nobody does this alone. I mean, I am a solopreneur, but nobody does this alone. The reason why I am so successful is because people see me and want me to be successful and suggest me for other conferences and suggest me to, companies to come in and speak. And the fact that they have done that for me, like like you have to care about these people in a genuine way. So,
Yeah. Like Mary, right?
Mary,
Mary needs to get a bouquet of flowers
I
or
know.
something.
It's so funny that people talk about like, oh, how did you get started? And it's literally, she's the reason I'm a speaker. So,
I love it. Seriously, though, people come on this show. Someone came out on this show once. Like, these are the things that happen. And so, in the conversation,
yeah.
things like Mary come up, like, wait a minute, I am emotional about this.
Yeah.
This is hitting me different. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about this conversation, but it just happens. I think
Yeah.
because, like authentic networking, this is authentic conversation. There's no script, there's no
Right.
pre-planned questions. It's just whatever comes up, comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I say, nobody does this alone, our relationships, whether they are at home, whether they are our friends, whether they are work, I mean, it shapes every single one of our experiences. So,
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is that we are community beings. We weren't
yeah.
ever meant to be alone. We're
Right.
all connected. I'm pretty spiritual and I really believe that you meet the people you're supposed to meet,
Right.
all the things. We've already talked about
Yeah.
divine timing and
Yeah.
I feel like we're never meant to do this alone. And the way um, we live now, just our own immediate family. It didn't used to be that way. You used to have grandparents living in the house.
Mhm.
You used to have aunts and uncles living with you. And
Mhm.
it was a community of raising the children, right?
Mhm.
I was watching Lenox Hill last night. It's the first time I ever saw it. It's a documentary
Okay.
about hospitals. But one of the OBGYNs on there was saying, I want to talk to women about childbirth because we're not meant to do this alone.
Mhm.
Somehow in our culture, we've isolated women giving birth.
Mm.
Where it used to be, one of my favorite books is The Red Tent. It used to
Yeah.
be that all the women came together and
Yeah.
birthed the baby together,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's the same in business. I agree with you. We're not meant to do it alone.
No. I mean, and I would not be successful if I didn't have a network. Fact, not opinion. Like, I just know that. I mean, every day I get inquiries into my business and I always ask, how did you hear about me? And inevitably it's from somebody in my network or they saw me speak. But inevitably it's like, oh, somebody said that I had to reach out to you. I mean, it's just,
There's no greater compliment.
No. I mean, and they trust me with that. Like they know that I'll be good for them. Like they trust me to do a really good job. Like that is when somebody trusts you with that recommendation. I mean, we've got sort of like a trust deficit right now in in the world. And especially in our companies where 44% of employees say they don't trust their coworkers. Like how could you possibly be working at your best if you don't trust your teammates? And like and that is a lack of internal networking. That is a lack of creating frameworks for people within inside corporations where it's not just work, where we are building, we need to build relationships, because the more you care about your coworkers, the better work you're going to do.
Yeah. So, what is your biggest tip for that, for building those internal relationships? Because,
Yeah.
you can go and do I don't even know what the word is I'm thinking of right now, but you can all go and carry an egg on a spoon and nobody wants to do that, right?
Right.
So, having these team building days, but what is your advice?
So my advice, there's a recent study that showed that the people who are the most productive, innovative, and engaged in new or existing roles are those who create extremely broad, mutually beneficial, and uplifting relationships within the companies that they're a part of. The problem with most companies is that only 20% of companies have relationship building as as a part of onboarding. So we all have onboarding when we go to companies, but only 20% of companies have relationship building as part of the onboarding process, and creating a framework for onboarding, for relationship building. Otherwise, it's left to people to do it on their own. And you you don't know what you don't know about other people, and it's really hard sometimes to talk to people you don't know in the office or whatnot. We need to build frameworks within our offices from before a person starts, from like before onboarding. Like so when somebody is joining a company, like priming that person so that other people know who that person is and how they're, who this person is that's joining, so that I remember, it's been a long time since I had a first day at an office, but like you get that dreaded walk around the office where it's like, oh, okay, happy first day, nice to meet you. Well, what if that wasn't so terrible? What if you had forms and you got to know that person and they filled out these? I have this form that I share with companies where they fill out a form like, this is who is joining, like this is their favorite color, this is what their dog's name is, this is what they do for hobbies, like this is the book they're reading right now, the show they're binging right now. So that when and the company needs to say, when we have a new person starting, you have to read that. You have to read that. And so when that person gets walked around the office, they're like, oh, hey, I saw you're reading this, or I saw you're watching. I am too. What do you think about like, and then conversations start to happen naturally then around things that people are interested in, which otherwise they wouldn't get to those things because we're stuck just having work conversations. So the onus is on the company to create the framework.
I've never heard anyone say that before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just blew my mind because it's so simple and it
Yep.
makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I've never heard of it or thought of it before.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Well, you're
So
not the only
tell
one,
me,
because only 20% of companies are including networking and cross silo connections as part of onboarding. So,
yeah, but it just, why wouldn't you want, you're spending the majority of your life with these people.
yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to have closer relationships?
Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing. So tell me about, because this is new to me, is EQ, IQ, and personality.
Yeah. So that was a talk that I used to give. I don't give that talk anymore. Um, because I think there are people who can talk about emotional intelligence better than I can. Um, but I think it all just is one, your personality, embrace it. I just did this podcast. It's not going to come out. I think it comes out next. Maybe it comes out this week. I don't know. Anyways, I watched a documentary on Ric Flair. I don't know if you know
Oh
anything
my
about
God,
wrestling.
yes. I was a
Nature
Hulk
Boy Ric
Hogan
Flair.
junkie.
Yes. Okay. So me too. I loved wrestling when I was a kid. And I think it's because I just love the characters and like every wrestler had a brand, you know. And so I just watched the Nature Boy Ric Flair documentary. And I think it's so funny how like he was such a personality. Such I mean, he's still alive. He was such a personality. He was such a brand. And he was so the exact opposite of Hulk Hogan. So Hulk Hogan was milk and vitamins, and Ric Flair was like strippers and liquor. Like, I mean, it's just and they were both wildly successful. They were both very much who they are. And so when it comes to personality, do not be afraid of your personality. Do not shy away from your personality. Um, I think we are caught, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, we're like caught up in like what does a professional look like and what do they sound like instead of just saying I am a professional and this is what I sound like, you know. So there's the whole personality there. Now, like EQ and IQ, like it's been shown that the people who are more emotionally intelligent are the people who make more money. I mean, the studies have shown this. But I always say that, you know, the doing good work, like being good at your job. So the IQ of the job, like being good at the job, is like literally a barrier to entry. Congratulations. You know, you are good at the job just like everybody else. You have to be good at the job just like everybody else. But it's your personality and your ability to connect with people that are really going to change your career.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's the energy, right? Like I've talked about your energy. It's big and it's just so let me just wrap you up in all of this because we can all do this together energy, right?
You know what's so funny is when people meet me, you the first time you met me was live and in person, but
Yeah.
most people don't. They either see me on the podcast or on my videos or whatever. And then when they meet me in person, they expect me to be really tall. And for the listeners, I'm so short. I'm 5'2". And so people are like taken off guard. Like I met this woman for the first time. She like follows my videos and everything. And she was like, "Holy shit. Like you are small." And she was like, "I just assumed you were like tall and like a big she's like you're such a big presence and I'm not she's like I'm actually looking at you weird because I don't understand how it's all fitting in that little body." But you met me
Exactly.
in per
You are a big presence,
Yeah.
but it's beautiful. And when I saw you talk, you were wearing stilettos. I mean,
Yeah.
those were big heels. And I thought, sweet Mary, if I got up on stage in those heels, I'd be on my
I
face.
still love those heels. I wore them last month at a keynote. I love those heels.
It just makes you more of a badass. It
I wear
does.
I mean, I don't always wear heels. I whatever I wear is got some sort of like metal on it or sparkle or something on my feet always.
Yeah. It's part of your personality. It's
Yeah.
bringing your whole self in.
I'm
Like you
very
wear your
into Betsy Johnson. Betsy Johnson makes a lot of sparkly things. I have many pairs of Betsy Johnson shoes.
I know so little about shoes that I'm like, who? What? Now I'm gonna have to look it
Betsy
up.
Johnson. I had an Achilles issue last year or the year before, I can't remember. I think it was last year. And so I couldn't wear heels on stage for a long time because I couldn't have my foot in that position. And so I bought these blinged out Betsy Johnson sneakers. Like when I tell you, like it was like they sparkle. And I had a survey at the end of my keynote. And one of the, like, any question, do you have any questions for Julian? I'll get back to everybody. It will take me a while, but I'll get back to everybody. So many people wrote, please tell me where those sneakers are from. And so now whenever I wear them, I'm like, I know you're all going to ask. They're Betsy Johnson. You can buy them on Betsy Johnson or on Amazon.
I am not earning commission on these
Right.
sales.
Yep.
That is so fantastic. But here we go. Like this is networking, right?
Hmm.
This is referring someone else's product or service
Right.
because you think it's amazing.
Yep. Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
so much easier than we make it.
Yeah. I networking has gotten a bad rap. You know, originally it was sort of like a good old boys network thing. And now people still feel that. I mean, there was a study out of Harvard that actually showed that the idea of networking made people feel dirty. Like, yeah, like, and I read the study and now I can't remember exactly how they termed it, but it was like word association with things and it made people feel dirty. And I think it is comes from that, that old boys network way of networking. And that was very much a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, quid pro quo, one hand washes the other. That's not how networking works because I am very rarely going to need something at the exact same time that you need something. So networking is offering help when you can without knowing when you're gonna get that reciprocity because that's not why we're doing it. It's not I scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's I will help you. And when I am in need, I have a lot of people I can reach out to and ask for referrals or strategic introductions or help or whatever. And there's like, there's so much talk now about like Nepo babies and the death of meritocracy, and people are cynical that old boys networks are coming back. The only way to make sure that that doesn't happen is to build your network for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what they're doing. Don't worry about what they're doing. You build the biggest badass network you can.
Yeah. And that's how you change the world.
Yep.
You worry about what you're doing. You show up in the best way you can show up, in the way you want to show up,
Yep.
and just continue to iterate and iterate. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, you've made a change.
Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say like, "How do you get a seat at the table?" I was like, "You build the table." Um, and people are like, "Oh, when one door closes, a window opens." I'm like, "No, open the door. It's how they work. They open and shut." It's like there's so many different ways to look at different things. So, but building your network, you will never regret building a network. You will regret not having one.
Yeah. There is a person that I connected with a couple of years ago at the South Shore Conference for Women, Manessa Kanecki, and she has a podcast called Don't Shit All Over Yourself. And I was on her podcast. She was on my podcast. Like, we're still in connection. And I have a surgery coming up, and I was just having a coffee chat with her. And she's like, "Oh, I'm going to send you soup. What's your address?" And I'm like, "What?"
That's
And she's
awesome.
like, "Oh, yeah, I had surgery and someone sent me the soup and it was the best thing." And I was like, "Oh my God, this feels like a warm hug."
Yeah.
Like, she's not getting anything out of sending me
Right.
soup. She's just
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
this relationship has just built one thing after another
Yep.
until now she's sending me soup.
Yeah. I mean, and also relationships take time. She wasn't
Right.
going to send you soup the first day she met you, but like we are investing in relationships. And it's funny, I gave a speech a little while ago last month. I, I give a lot of speeches, but one particular, I mean, talk about like noticing things. I always wear these bracelets and she's off of Tiffany Giselle. She's off of Cape Cod.
Yep.
Um, a woman came up to me afterwards and she had bracelets on and she gave me a bracelet. She was like, "I can tell you love bracelets." And so like she gave me one and I was like, "I you don't have to do this." She was like, "I do." She was like, "You were amazing. I loved every minute of it. I want you to have this." And I was like, "Oh my God." Like people, I am floored by how nice people are, and this is what's sad, is it doesn't take much and people don't do it. It doesn't
Right.
take much. I always say the extra mile is never crowded. It, I'm part of the problem too. I'm moving so fast sometimes that I move too fast to be not kind, but I'm thoughtful, I think.
Mm.
I move too fast to be thoughtful. So I think we should think about how we can be thoughtful like to our network and do the unexpected for our network. So,
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good one.
yeah.
Yeah. Slow down, take a breath. How can I be thoughtful toward my network?
Right.
I love that. So, in terms of being thoughtful to our network, is there anything as we're kind of wrapping up that you feel like you'd like to offer to listeners?
Yeah, so actually, so March is Women's History Month, and I don't know if you know this, but of course it is. International Women's Day is March 8th, and that is my birthday.
Happy
Of
birthday.
course, of course it is. Of course I was born on International Women's Day.
Right?
Um, but having mentioned that one of the single biggest limiting factors for women in business is lack of a network, and with March being Women's History Month, and I'm hoping that people start to make change um in their lives starting in March. I don't do this very often. I don't do one-on-one coaching much anymore, just because of my speaking schedule. But I set aside a day in February 27th to be exact, where I've blocked out the entire day for one-to-one coaching. It's an hour with me. It's what are you struggling with? How do you make a networking plan or a business development plan or a brand plan? How can we come up with a plan for you to grow your network or tap into the one you already have and make strategies around that? That is normally $497 for that one-to-one. And I'm doing a special. So $200 off. So $297. And it's just for one day. I literally, after that, I'm on the road pretty much for the rest of the year. So February 27th, I will give you a link if anybody wants to sign up. I think there are only 5 slots. So,
Well, that's perfect because, the link is in show notes. That gives everyone 5 days to fill those
mhm,
5 slots.
yeah.
And 297 is such a steal because, I mean, for anyone who's listening right now, just listening to you in this, what's it been, 40-minute conversation, you can feel how powerful you are. You can feel how much you're going to get from
Mm,
working with Julie. And so I just feel like
mhm.
it's a priceless opportunity.
And I have a lot of fun with them as well. I love the like I said, most people don't think too much about networking strategy. And to put a strategy in place where somebody can take that and they have a framework for creating that network or strengthening their network or networking into the job they want or networking, um I I have so much fun and you would be amazed at how much we get done in an hour.
I'm not even surprised. I'm not even surprised. So as we're closing up,
Mm.
I love your podcast. This shit works. And you close your podcast with a new drink all the
Yes.
time. And
Every
so
every episode. Yep.
every episode. And so I have to ask, what is your favorite drink?
So it depends on what time of year it is. So in the winter, I drink bourbon. So it's probably a Manhattan right now would be the drink that I would my go-to. In the summer, I really like an Aperol spritz.
Hmm.
You gotta
That's
like bitter though. Aperol is bitter, so you have to like bitter. But I really love an Aperol spritz.
I love bitters. I mean, I
Mm.
like to just put bitters in my iced tea.
Oh, really? I put it in
Oh,
soda
yeah.
water.
See, I'm not big on the fizzy. Like I can't drink soda water. I can't drink like I don't know any of those
Any
seltzer
carbonated.
waters.
My dentist told me I have to stop I'm addicted to soda water. When I turned 40, I gave up, not gave up. I stopped drinking soda, like Coke. I was addicted to caffeine-free Coke, Diet Coke. And so I gave it up when I was 40, and I haven't really had any since, but it turned into like a soda water uh addiction.
Yeah.
And my dentist told me I have to stop because it's like wearing away my enamel because I drink
Yeah.
so much soda water. In my
It's
car, this is so embarrassing. In my car, if you would think I was a drunkard because like I turn a corner and there's like 18 cans of soda water in the back seat, like clank, 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 because I drink it and I throw it in the back seat. Then my husband is like, "What is going on here?"
you've got like the frat house car.
Yeah, yeah. hmm I take a corner and it's literally clank, 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 all these cans of soda water.
See, I love that. Just be yourself. Let's talk about what the inside of your car looks like and be
Well,
okay with that.
yeah.
It's so relatable. It's so relatable. Also, seltzer and soda water, so bad for your digestive system.
Shit, really?
Yeah. really
Like
bad for
how?
your digestion. I guess all the bubbles.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
my daughter's a big seltzer water, and I was like, you have to stop. Like I read a study about it, and it's so bad for your gut.
Oh God.
I know, something else, right? But that's okay. You'll find another addiction to replace this one.
Yeah. Okay, still water again. Well, what about like Perrier? Those bubbles are so small. I
It
bet
has
you.
to be better, right? If the
Right.
bubbles are small, it has to be better.
Yeah.
All right, I'll
See.
just go with that.
Yeah.
I play a doctor on TV.
Yeah.
Julie, this is amazing. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
saying like, sure, let's do it. And just
Yeah. Even though I rescheduled 5 times. Sorry.
whatever. Divine timing, sister, divine timing. But I know that you are such a valuable conversation to my listeners, to truly everyone who hears you. You're such an example of women having the courage to show up in the world and be themselves and own their place and own their voice. And
Hmm.
just big props to you.
Yeah, I get a lot of feedback from my speeches, and the feedback I love is when people say that when they look at me, they know that they can do it because I'm not going to say I'm not special. We're all special in our own special ways, but like I'm I'm just me. And
Yeah,
so when people see that I can do it, they feel like that gives them the power or the permission to do it as well. I think a lot of times we're just waiting for permission. Stop waiting for permission.
especially for women.
Mhm.
Women wait for permission.
Yep.
Stop waiting for permission. That's a great way to wrap it up. Stop waiting for permission. That could literally be another show in itself.
Right. I'm writing it down.
Do it. Write it down. You own it, sister. Stop waiting for permission. You heard it here first, ladies.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being
Yeah,
here.
of
You're
course.
amazing.
Thank you.